Oh, absolutely. It's very tragic. And, you know, let's see. I'm getting some additional information. Apparently his hands were behind him. So so again, if his hands were behind him, you know, again, it just, you got to wait and see what it says. Now, can people move around handcuffed behind them? Sure they can. Absolutely they can. But again, what exactly occurred? What is the physical evidence, you know, inside the vehicle? Is there any DNA on the officer's weapon that showed maybe he grabbed the weapon or grabbed his taser or some other thing? Who knows? You know, there's just so many questions I know that people are asking, particularly, you know, when you get the barbershop version of what people are saying, because, you know, because they were talking about it out here on the radio this morning about that case. And I've heard some other folks kind of talking about it around town. And, you know, the same thing. Well, you know, how did that happen? You know, the guy was seat belted and handcuffed. How, you know, what's that all about? So, again, I think people are really kind of baffled by it and, you know, trying to figure out what you know, what's going on.
I understand. Yeah, it's at any rate, it is tragic, Chief. And our prayers and our thoughts go out not only to Mr. Green's family, who was the victim, but also Mr. Owens, who was the officer. And so tragic.
Sure. And let me also share one thing before we, well, I'll tell you what, I'll hold this because we've got some comments that I want to share when we come back from the break regarding this. And this has certainly opened up some very painful wounds for some. And, you know, for others, you know, people are just wondering, you know, what's going on? How are we going to get past this? And but I can tell you it at least appears that there is certainly a united effort to get to the bottom of it. You know, just from the statements that I've seen from the exec and from the state's attorney and the chief and others. So I'm just hoping that once all that has been said and done, that it will certainly allow the community and the department to sort of start moving back in the right direction again, you know?
Yeah.
So, but anyway, but Pastor C, you as always, I love your introspection and I love your devil's advocate. And so when we get back, we're going to look at a few more comments about what we're talking, and then we want to get back into this whole discussion of tragedies. Does it always take a tragedy to make us appreciate things? So when we get right back, let's get back to it.
This is Straight No Chaser Talk Radio. We're just getting started. Straight No Chaser Talk Radio.
He's drinking that with no chaser.
Today in school, I learned a lot. In chemistry, I learned that no one likes me. In English, I learned that I'm disgusting. And in physics, I learned that I'm a loser.
Today in school, I learned that I'm ugly and useless. And in gym, I learned that I'm pathetic and a joke. In history, I learned that I'm trash.
Today in school, I learned that I have no friends. In English, I learned that I make people sick. And at lunch, I learned that I sit on my own because I smell. In chemistry, I learned that no one likes me.
In biology, I learned that I'm fat and stupid. And in math, I learned that I'm trash.
The only thing I didn't learn in school today?
The only thing I didn't learn today?
The only thing I didn't learn
is why no one ever helps.
Kids witness bullying every day. They want to help, but they don't know how. Teach them how to stop bullying and be more than a bystander at stopbullying.gov. A message from the Ad Council.
The path to happiness is not the easy one, but taking drugs will not make it easier. Many people got lost and end up losing their life to drugs. If you or anyone that you know is within that path, don't be afraid to seek for help. Visit www.adk.gov.my for information related to drug abuse. So, know your path. This message is brought to you by the National Anti-Drugs Agency.
In our world, in our country, and in our cities, on our streets, in the alleys behind our homes, there are orphans, foster and homeless children, who are the victims of child abuse and neglect. Hello, I'm Malcolm McDowell. Now, 80% of these children will end up homeless, and 60% will end up in prison without our help. They're good kids with bad parents, or no parents at all. They feel helpless, unloved, and full of despair. Oftentimes thrust into a world where dangerous influences lurk to prey upon their innocence. Safety Harbor Kids has developed a solution to help these children.
Safety Harbor Kids helped me get a job. Safety Harbor Kids let me know someone cares.
Safety Harbor Kids helped me go to college.
Help change a child's life forever by supporting safetyharborkids.org today.
Welcome back to Straight No Chaser. I am Pastor C, and I'm sitting here with the Chief, and we're having a great discussion. We were having a great discussion before our break on what happened in Maryland. And, you know, Chief, I know you have some comments over there, and I have some messages as well. And I'm going to ask you this controversial one because I believe it's going to do some things. Now, you ready? Straight No Chaser. That's how we do it, right?
Yes, sir.
I was asked that if it were a white officer, would the force still speak against his behavior to protect him until a trial or whatever? Or did they respond immediately because the officer was black?
I do. I do. I think that regardless of if the officer was purple or green, I think you would have gotten the same result. I think that there's too much at stake. I mean, in terms of community and community trust and the reputation of the agency and so forth to allow anyone to be engaged in activity that would put themselves or the public at risk. So I do believe that if it was a white officer, that it would have been the same result with the same circumstances. I do believe that. Okay. And then the example or the reference was the white officer that went in and killed her neighbor, how that was not immediately called murder. Well, again, Pastor C, when you look at that situation, that was, I think the chief actually came out, and the chief in Dallas, correct? Is that the incident you're talking about?
One in Texas, yes, sir.
Yeah. Because that chief came out right away and stated that she had questions about it. Now, of course, you know, there were a lot of different things that happened there, and there were some controversial statements made by the Texas Ranger and all that kind of stuff. So I think you're kind of comparing apples and oranges in that case. But, you know, because in this case, if we just isolate them, when you look at this case versus that case in Texas, you don't have any of the investigators saying, you know, I think the guy may have acted appropriately, or I don't think I thought Mr. Green was high on some type of space dust or something like that. You know, they got right to the business at hand. You know, they got right to it. Let's do an investigation. They got the special incident response team out there, and they did an investigation, and based on that investigation, now this guy is in jail on a no bond status. Sure. So, and you know, in my opinion, you know, whether you're black or white, if you're doing things that rise to that level, you know, you have to be held accountable for it.
Absolutely. I understood the message, you know.
Oh yeah, I get where they're coming from, and but see again, but that's why it's so important, and we said it earlier, and you know, that everyone involved with this is looking at this with a fine-tooth comb, which they should, and everyone has made the public, they've made it very clear to the public, if you will, that we're going to look at this. We're looking at past cases. We're looking at the other incident he was involved in 2011. We're going to really take a deep dive with this to see if we missed anything. And if there's anything else that we see that gives us alarm, we're going to some additional action with that too. And so I think at this point, that's about all that you can do is you're going to have to go back, because whatever actions or changes in policy, or if there are convictions, whatever has to happen, Pastor C, it has to be grounded in fact. It can't be based on emotions. And this happened to me 20 years ago. The state's attorney, the exec, the chief of police, they have to be able to go back and say X, Y, and Z happened based on the investigation, and here are the facts. And I think they have to be given the opportunity to do that. And I'm glad to see that the community is willing to give them the opportunity to look into it and get to the bottom of it, because we all have questions. I mean, you and I were sitting here scratching our heads like, huh? That doesn't seem right.
That don't go together. Wait
right. That doesn't go together. That's like plaids and stripes, Right. So, but I do want to share one of the other comments that we received from Phil. And, we can always count on Phil to keep it completely straight, no chaser. And Phil said, it's the culture of the community. There are just some places where some things are not tolerated, and officers know it. He says this state's attorney and county executive will never allow this to be mishandled. And so, and then he also says that we need to look at our family and learn to understand mental health and the need for help. The officer was a human being, and that's good. That's a great point. Whatever happened there, something set this thing in motion. And if this tragedy was the result of some type of mental deficiency, then we absolutely owe that officer and the community to find out what happened, how do we fix it, and if it can be fixed. But, you have to compartmentalize that, but you still have to be accountable for your actions.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
I totally agree with that. And sure. I think the mental health question has to be considered,
absolutely.
Because, you alluded to the fact that there is an extensive background process even before you get into law enforcement.
That's
and
correct.
I believe there are some things, some traumatic experiences that police officers go through that can alter a healthy mental state. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. One of the things that I was so fortunate is that, I had an amazing wife in my corner, so I could come home at night and talk about some of the things that I saw, or cases we were working, that just, not going into the detail of the case, but, we had the death of a child today, and, those types of things. If you're on the scene of something, and, officers, they do all they can to rationalize when they run into these things. And, some people may see that as being cold and callous, but it's actually a coping mechanism. Wow. when you're sitting there and there's blood everywhere, there's a 12-year-old kid over there dead. There's another 16-year-old who's in custody. And then you got people shot. I mean, it takes a lot on you. And you're there on the scene, and you know what you have to do. You have to protect life and property and get your evidence and all the thousands of things that happen at a police scene. But internally, when all that's over with and you start to come down off of that situation, you think about it. You think about it quite a bit. And sometimes you have to joke about it. Sometimes you cry about it. Sometimes you have to talk to your pastor about it. But the problem is that sometimes we think that, well, now that I have the badge on, there's a cape that comes with this. So I'm Superman or I'm Superwoman. So I can't be sitting here crying and sniffling and blowing, snot out my nose, man. I'm a tough guy. I'm a lawman.
Absolutely.
And so sometimes things are internalized, and they just are overlooked. You don't want to be that guy that's, hey, Sarge, I need to talk to somebody about that scene. You want to seem like, hey, man, I'm tough. I got Teflon on my heart. Yeah. And sometimes to the detriment of your well-being. So it's a tough profession. It's not for everybody. And but it does require people of integrity. It requires